It's time for the Mic'd Up Podcast with your host.
I'm Constantine, your Tampa Realtor, and this show is for local entrepreneurs to showcase their businesses and discuss the successes and setbacks of running a thriving business.
You're listening to
The Mic'd Up Podcast.
Welcome back to the Mic'd Up Podcast. Today's guest, Jaleh, Piran, Vesseh.
Hello, hello, hello. Good morning.
How the hell are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I appreciate you coming in. We've been trying to make this happen. You're a very busy lady.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm, again, very happy to be here, and it's about time.
Damn right. So Jaleh is an attorney here in Newport Richey. Your specialty is in estate planning, trust, wills, probate, elder law, guardianships, which include litigation. Did I miss anything?
Medicaid planning as well.
Now you're just bragging. That's like too many things, but now you're just bragging. But no, seriously, fantastic attorney. I personally have worked with you and used your services for my family. And I want to get into how that's going to benefit the individual, because there's one thing in life. You don't know what you don't know, and you need to know that you don't know it. And for me, I had to take a step back and really learn a lot as far as planning for the future, because you don't know what's going to happen. And at any given moment, and in dealing with this, and this is how I met you, and we'll get into that later, is in dealing with those delicate situations, if you don't have something in place, it can become such a massive burden on your loved ones.
Absolutely.
And so I want to dive into that. Your offices are in Newport Richey, but you work throughout the state of Florida, right?
Correct. So I typically only do take cases in Hillsborough, Hernando, Pasco, Pinellas. Sometimes I do go a little north. I do take some cases in Citrus County, Marion County. I try to stay clear of South Florida. In all transparency, I know that you're from South Florida.
Oh, no. I don't go back there either.
I love South Florida. I went to undergrad there. But practicing law down there is like the Wild Wild West. So I try to steer clear of that. But yes, in general, I do practice throughout the state.
Yeah, South Florida's changed a lot. When I grew up there, I went to visit my sister this past weekend, and we went down into like where I grew up somewhat, a little bit north of where I grew up in Coral Springs, but went into Boca. I don't even recognize it anymore.
Yeah.
And we're driving on I-95, and I think I saw one Florida license plate.
Yeah.
And it was, count how many states are in front of you. And it was just unbelievable. And the one thing I really don't miss about that way, down that way, I haven't really heard a horn honk in quite a while up here.
Yes.
People usually they give you, a look if you cut them off. It's everywhere, nonstop down there.
Absolutely.
And it's just so uncomfortable. So I don't blame you for not going into South Florida that much. Although you can if you need to.
Absolutely.
So, so you graduated from Stetson University. You got a doctorate in law. What made you want to be an attorney?
Wow, that's a good one.
I know we're going to get deep in here.
I know, that was a really good one. Well, I can look back when I was a child, and I always felt like I was the advocate. I mean, if I went to when I was 12, 13 years old, and I would go out to dinner with my girlfriends, with their parents, of course, and I would always be the one that would end up ordering, or if there was a problem, even, in high school when our girlfriends would go out, they would be like, Jaleh, you say something. So I found from a very young age that I enjoyed being an advocate. And again, those are just kind of minor examples. But then when I got to college, actually, ironically, I took a criminal law class in undergrad. And I don't practice criminal law. I would never, because it's not my passion. But that really introduced me to the law in a way where I said, you know what, I really think this is something I want to do. And from that moment, my mind was made up that I wanted to be an attorney. And I pretty much never stopped from there. And
isn't it amazing? I've talked to a lot of business owners, and this podcast is for business owners, talking about the successes and setbacks that they have and growing, scaling businesses. And that it's more been educational around some of the setbacks. But the day that you get, and I'll never forget mine in real estate, working in corporate America for however many years it was. And then that aha moment, I'm like, this is what I love to do. And when I first met you was with a mutual client. And we didn't know each other. And you walked in like you owned that damn house. You had big old heels on. Your hair was pulled back. And I'm like, who the? And I'm sitting there talking to the client. Like,
and I'm 5'11". I'm 5'11" without heels.
Right. And so, and I'm 5'8". So you're like Shaq to me with your heels on. And it was one of those things to where, and I've only had this really a handful of times in my life where I've met another business owner where I'm like, that person's going to be a rock star. And we're going to get into that later on in in our conversation here. But that was such an interesting meeting because that was, I mean, the guy tried to run me over with a Cadillac or something like that.
Yeah.
Just because it wasn't that he didn't like me or his family didn't. He just wasn't in a very clear mental state. And I'm like, Jaleh, we got a little problem here.
Yeah.
We have like attempted murder going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now that I look back, I mean, that was at least 6 years ago.
Yeah.
6 years ago that we met. So
Yep.
time flies when you're having fun.
It was up in River Ridge. That house has actually sold twice since then.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you from my experience, and I appreciate the compliment in meeting you. Ironically, when we met, and I think your viewers will enjoy this, we kind of didn't rub each other the right way.
Oh, no.
Only because we were both so headstrong. But I think that with being a business owner, that's instrumental in your business is being headstrong, but also having the ability to take critique and criticism and direction from other professionals. So I think really quickly we developed a rapport after that initial, this guy's strong or this woman's strong. And I would tell you that's probably still to this day one of the most difficult real estate deals in the context of the type of law I practice, which in that case was a guardianship that I've ever dealt with. And you 1000% earned my respect and my loyalty in your profession because you got the deal to close. And I don't think anybody else could have got that deal specifically to close.
Yeah, that had a lot.
That was a big one for us. And we've pretty much been doing business together ever since. So I feel very grateful for that chance encounter. And ironically, I wanted to actually give the deal to another realtor and was talked out of it by the client who said to me, no, we've worked with Mike Constantine and we really want you to give him a shot. And I'm like, I don't know him. So it's interesting how things kind of come together because I'm so happy that they did push for you and I see why.
You touched on something in the beginning that I think is important in business. And I try to go into any transaction or any business, regardless what it is. If I'm in a partnership with someone, if they've hired me for real estate services or whatever, you got to go in with an open mind. And when you and I first met, it was in that kitchen that was literally falling down. I mean, that place was falling down and we were two alphas that met. And over, I would say it probably took, because that case, the property took months to close because of the issues that were found during inspections and permits and the estate and everything else. And so when we took a step back, and I think this is where a lot of business owners go wrong, is having the ability to take a step back and learn from another one who's an expert in their field. And so I like to think I'm a pretty confident individual, and I like to think that I know a lot about a lot, but I don't know anything about law. And when I sat back, now I'd handled, clients with estates when I was in the world of mortgage and banking, and I know how that part worked. But when I sat back and let you do your thing and you let me do my thing, and I think that, I had shown you a couple things that you didn't know, and in turn you showed me a lot that I didn't know. That's where the mutual respect had grown, because most business owners that go in, and I'd say my experience, 80% are really alphas. They're A-type, and they always want to be in charge. And you talked about when you went, with your girlfriends out to dinner, you want to be the one to, hey, we're going to order this. We'll take this appetizer. We'll take this and these drinks. And there's a time and place for that.
Absolutely.
And that, for me, it's been so much goddamn fun to watch. Like, I've been in your office and you and I, have had offline conversations about some things. And I've listened to you on the phone. I'm like, oh, this attorney on the other end's about to get an ass whooping. And it was so much fun. I'm just sitting here, I'm like, man, this is the best part of my day. But you do it in a very elegant way. Like, you don't talk down to people. You know your stuff and you're incredibly smart, but you don't talk down to who's on the other line. Because I know a lot of attorneys, and I've been around a ton of attorneys and done business with them. And you kind of know, for me anyway, I'm like, I will never refer business to that one, or I will definitely refer business. And the one consistent to get into my Rolodex, and I've talked to you about this before, I'm very guarded in who I allow into my Rolodex, because I've had so many people that they don't call back.
Yeah.
Hey, call this person for whatever service they want. And then I end up getting on the back end doing customer service because they're like, hey, he or she never called me back. Great. Now you're out.
Absolutely.
When it came to Jaleh, every single time, and I've thrown, quite a few people your way. They always call me literally the day of and say, thank you so much. I am so thankful that I am working with Jaleh. And I'm not saying that because you're here.
I love to hear that.
I'm
That's
dead serious.
awesome. I really love to hear that.
Another owner of a large company here locally that you know very well, both of those partners had called me and said, wow, she's impressive.
I love that. Thank you so much. Well, so let me kind of go back to what you were saying, excuse me, just to touch upon. So I have found, and somebody told me this, I think maybe my first year in practice, another attorney that I worked with.
What was your first year?
My first year in practice was in 2011.
Okay.
So I've made my 10th year in practice. So that to me is a great accomplishment with hopefully many, many more years. But they said to me, knowing your greatest strength, Jaleh, is knowing your weakness. That's your greatest strength. So when you're in a position that you can evaluate your weaknesses, and listen, we're human. Lawyers are human, realtors are human, business owners are human, we're human. So knowing that, I think, makes me a better lawyer. I think that makes you a better realtor, just like you said. In that deal, there were moments where I said, no, Mike, it's this. And you said, well, thanks, because I didn't know that because I'm not the lawyer, and vice versa. You explained lots of things to me that I didn't know because I'm not a realtor, although I do have an interplay with the law and what I do. With real estate and what I do. But that's really what I think it comes down to. And to be very frank with you, Mike, clients say the same thing to me about you. I mean, that's the truth. That's why
I pay them
handsomely, right? But the reality is I think that over the last 10 years, I have been in situations where I have really, 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 and I've tried really hard to listen to feedback. The most important feedback for me doesn't come from other lawyers or doesn't come from judges or court personnel. It comes from my clients. It comes from clients explaining to me why they chose my service either over another attorney or why they'll refer their clients or their family members to me. Or also over the past 10 years, because we have to be real, Mike, we're not perfect individuals. So I have been able to look at positive experiences and negative experiences with clients to say, how can I be a better lawyer? And what I have found, one of the most important things is what you said, how you communicate with others, how you speak to people. And that's probably consistently what I hear the most from clients is, you don't talk down to me. You don't make me feel stupid, even though I have no clue what you're talking about. And I might have to ask you to go back and explain it 2 more times, but you make me feel like I am a part of the process, that I'm not burdening you with my questions, and you're human. And so that's the touch that I try to bring to my law practice. And as part of the reason I opened my own firm, was to have the ability to treat my clients like people, not like numbers or things of that nature. And I think sometimes when attorneys get big and they grow and, you're a part of large firms or even some of the small firms with multiple staff members, you lose touch with the reality of your business is based upon your clients.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I talk to a lot of realtors on a very regular basis. And trying to think of a delicate way to put this, which is not really in my DNA, but
it's not.
In your
DNA at all.
I know. So you were talking about as businesses get larger. So as firms get bigger in real estate, it's as, teams get bigger, you lose that personal touch. And it is so true. But the general public falls for it. And I don't get it because bigger is not always better. That just means you're another number and you are in line at Publix to get it. You want your deli meat cut, take a number, take a number, take a number. The personal side of the business, to me, is when the owner of that business will reach out. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an owner. You can be a partner or something like that too. But, they will reach out to you individually and say, something, you are important. I don't care how big or small the deal that we're working on is or the settlement or whatever. There's something to be said that's a lost art. You go back to the 50s, it was a handshake and a smile. There weren't really billboards around back then, I don't think. And ever since it's kind of become the norm, companies want to get bigger. You've got the online shopping with Amazon and they just keep growing and growing and growing, but they're putting the little guy out of business. And then you have, Expedia who came in and they did the travel agency thing. But now guess what? We're paying more for travel than we were before because now they're in cahoots with Travelocity, and all the rest of them. Because if you search on those, the price is always the same. It used to be different, but now it's always the same when you shop. And now guess what? Oh, well, when you go onto a flight, now you're going to pay extra for food. That used to be every single seat got food or a drink or whatever. So in reality, bigger's not always better, even though that's something that is portrayed way too often. And
I couldn't agree with you more. I actually was having this conversation with another practitioner yesterday who also is a business owner and has a practice. Size matters, right? I know we see it everywhere. Size matters, but you have to take into context when you say size matters. Well, I say size does matter. So when you're in a situation where you don't have, in my practice, 100 attorneys, 500 paralegals, when you call my office, my paralegal knows who you are. I know who you are. We understand where your case is at, where things are or where they may not be. And we're happy to answer questions and talk to you. And I will tell you that is probably one of the main reasons, Mike, I opened my own practice was because clients consistently, when I worked for larger firms, would say, listen, nobody understands my case. I'm always directed to speak to the paralegal, even though that's fine some of the time, but sometimes I have legal questions that only an attorney can answer. So that is part of the reason I feel my success is continuing to grow and things are going in a great direction because size matters. And every client that comes to my office knows their case is unique and individual. And again, like we talked about, they're a person. So I think that, there's nothing wrong with growth. And I hope one day to have potentially more attorneys that work underneath me. Right now, it's just myself and my paralegal. But I will never compromise the personal touch for that growth. I just won't do it because that's where I believe I have been successful with my practice and my clients.
What's the most memorable client that you've had? You can't mention names. I get it. But just from... We've talked offline about some stuff, but everybody's got that one that you're never going to forget.
I know this probably would not seem to you like something that would be so memorable, or maybe to other people, but to me, it was very memorable because for me personally, work-life balance and family and, your wife, your children, my husband, my children, those are the most important things to me. I mean, they just are, right? We work as a means to an end. The reason I even bring this up is I had a client and she was 100 years old and she came into my office for a new will for estate planning. And she walked in all on her own, not a wheelchair, totally had capacity. We sat in a conference room and I looked at her and today we'll call her Helen, but that wasn't her name. And I said, Helen, you're 100 years old. Who do you live with? She said, I live alone. I said, what do you mean you live alone? You're 100. She said, okay. I live alone. I have somebody that comes in to help me with housekeeping. And I looked at her and I said, could you please tell me, what is it? What's the secret to live, to be 100, to be healthy? And she was happy. That's the main thing. She was happy. She was gregarious. And she said, be happy, smile, talk to people, be courteous. When you go to the grocery store, wave. The little things, take care of your body, eat right, exercise, do the little things that lots of people don't think of. And I will never forget her. I'll never forget her because for me, every day I try to embody that tenet of be nice to people, treat other people well, be positive, be happy. And it has an effect on your body. So I know that's probably not what you expected me to say, but it, there's something that I feel like and nothing against the generation, the millennials or anything like that. I have a 13-year-old son, so trust me, your kids, like we get it, right? But I feel like there's a lost art in really, truly appreciating our elders in the baby boomer generation and the people of, the people that went and fought in World War II, the people that understood what it meant, now, of course, as we, progress and we're, losing more and more of them just because they're, aging. But there's a lost art in taking the advice of somebody who's been there and done that, even if they're not a lawyer, and taking that, utilizing it in your own life and your own practice, because they're a wealth of value. So I always tell, my 13-year-old, my father's 81, talk to him, get information from him, because that's your resource, not Wikipedia or Google, or, of course those are resources too, but that's where the real life lessons, in my opinion, are learned.
You couldn't have nailed it more on the head if you tried. That to me, I miss my grandfather. My grandfather fought on the beaches of Normandy. Part of the reason why I went into the military. He would never talk about it. But when he spoke, he would tell stories about, when he lived in Liverpool, England. My family's from England. You know, Liverpool was bombed. My grandmother was pregnant with, you know, my father, and then they used to have to go gather wood from the streets, from the buildings that had fallen down just to keep themselves warm.
Wow.
But you listen to those stories, and the problem I think today is information's too accessible. You used to have to read papers. You used to have to read books. Or, God forbid, you actually had to go out and do it yourself. You had to learn how to fix a motor, or you had to learn how to fix whatever it was that you needed, you know, your stove. And which, by the way, appliances back then lasted for like 50 years.
Right.
And now you buy a stove that's dead in 3 years because they have a shelf life to them.
Yeah.
But that's how society's gone. It's click, I want it, click, I want it. And people pay way too much, you know, time with instant gratification from the likes on Facebook, or I can see you're texting me back. And then because you get those little lines beeping up, and then they get so irritated so quickly. But you know, the fact that like the older generation, I always try to go out of my way to open a door if I see, I don't care where it's at. There's a little old lady goes to my gym that I love her. Her name is Susie. Love her. I swap recipes with the lady.
Yeah.
You know, I take more of hers than she's ever got of mine, but it's true. Like
Don't
you
tell
can.
that to Jamie.
No, Jamie ate it just last night. I made homemade banana bread last night,
Really?
and Susie had given me this recipe.
I love it.
And I make it, you know, with a bunch of different ways because I've asked Susie, hey, what works, what doesn't work, all this good stuff. But taking the advice and being able to step back into a time that's forgotten, you know, and going back to when, you know, business was a handshake and stuff like that. It's so lost on society right now. And especially like, you know, everything's so, the world just seems a lot more aggressive, you know, than 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to get into the old, well, back in my day kind of thing. You know, I walked uphill twice to go to school. I don't want to do that. But it's true. You know, I mean, life has gotten easier, but people have gotten more aggressive because of it. And, yeah, that's for another time. You know, I mean, I'm glad you brought it up because, you know, Helen, awesome for her, 100 years old. That's why I know my wife's going to outlive me. You know, she is one of the happiest people I've ever met. And she has made me.
I love your wife, just FYI. She knows that though, but she's I would say she's a ball of sunshine. That's really the best way.
She literally made me a better person.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, it's difficult to look back and be like, wow, I really didn't like who I was, but my wife truly has made me a better person. And I tell her all the time how grateful I am, you know, for having her in my life at the time that I found her, because she tells me how patient I've become.
Yeah.
And I was never patient. I you know, I grew up in a house where, you know, my dad wasn't the most patient of guys, you know, and I had to learn that because in real estate, and I'm sure in law, you get people barking at you all day and it's always your fault. It's always your fault. I'm like, there's literally no way that this could have been my fault. I've kept you up to speed the entire way. Here's the texts and emails and all that. And they just want to keep going at you, you know, but I've learned just to kind of, you know, the book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. I don't sweat small stuff anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and I try not to take it personally because I always say, you know what, I'm putting a roof over their head. And there's very few clients that get that way anymore. But in the past year, it's become much more frequent because of people coming from out of state that are just from very aggressive states.
Absolutely.
And some that I've actually been somewhat surprised with. But you know, going back to, you know, Helen, the 100-year-old, when should somebody look into your services for estate planning, elder law, whatever the case, you know?
So estate planning, I would say when you turn 18. I know people say, well, what do you mean? My child just turned 18. He's in college. He doesn't own anything. I mean, if anything, he has debt. So why is it necessary? The best advice and the best rationale that I can give you is, once you become a legal adult, so once you reach age 18, if anything happens to you, and the best example that I can give to you is what we see all the time, just being in Pasco County, is US 19, right? I don't have the statistics on it, but US 19, I think, is one of the most dangerous roads in the whole country.
I think it is the deadliest as far as like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the deadliest.
Country, I think there's some statistic that it comes up like nationwide, not just in the state of Florida.
No. It was the number one most dangerous road in the country. And then I believe it was like I-95. And then there was another one that was up in, I think, New Jersey somewhere.
So let me give you, to piggyback on why I said 18 and why I used US 19 as an example. Perfect example. Gentleman went, served 2 tours in Iraq, fought for his country, came back. If I'm not mistaken, he had served his full term. He didn't resign. I apologize. I'm not military, but he didn't resign. But
Reenlist.
I apologize. And he came back in one piece from war, right? within 60 days of coming back, he was involved in a head-on collision riding his motorcycle in US 19 and had a traumatic brain injury. He was only 25 years old, very, very young, right? So you would think, oh, why would this individual, why would he need estate planning? He didn't have estate planning. As a matter of fact, and because of the military, and obviously you know this, Mike, before he went to war, he had signed a power of attorney form, just a general form from the military for his wife. Well, his wife had left him while he was actually active duty overseas. So with that being said, he's in this accident. His mother contacts me and we have to get a full-blown guardianship, which all could have been negated if he would have had a properly executed power of attorney naming his mother to make his decision. So part of the reason for estate planning is, proper planning now eliminates the worry of tomorrow. So you want to determine, Mike, who makes decisions for you if something happens to you, if you're alive, but you're incapable of making decisions because you are incapacitated.
I love that you use the military example, because when I got out of the Marine Corps, I thought I was protected, because when you go to Parris Island, one of the first things that you do is they make you write out your last will, or if you're getting ready to head off to combat, you write down your last will testament saying, I want, this to go. And it's so like preschoolish.
Mm-hmm.
It's a piece of paper. It says, I want my belongings to go to so-and-so. And then you send it over to legal. They type it up and then it's, whatever, but it's probably a worthless piece of paper, because now that I've been through that process with you and I've seen, how I should be holding my assets, my house or vehicles, or if people have jewelry, I'm not a big jewelry guy, but those need to be held in a very specific way. And then as far as your health care goes, I don't ever want to be on life support. I didn't have anything in place for that, which it would have been impossible for my wife to act on my behalf, or my children if my wife didn't survive me. And you walked us through that, and you were so patient. You were so patient with the questions that we had. And you even called us back saying, I think we should tweak this. I think you did it twice. You're like, I think we should tweak this because you said this. And I'm like, yeah, I thought we were covered. You're like, yeah, but there's a better way to do it because I just saw that. That showed me that you cared about us. We're not a transaction. And I'm forever grateful for that, because now that I've grown a business to a level that, I never thought that I would, I've got some stuff that I want to protect. And if I hadn't met you through the mutual client, I would have still been out in limbo and never realized the importance of a Jaleh, of an attorney that truly handles that. And so you said to start at the age of 18. What are some of the things that you would recommend for, let's say, a 45-year-old or a 50-year-old that's already basically built their wealth in most cases? What would your recommendations be if they came into your office?
So,
or a business owner for that matter, because we're on a business owner show. Yeah.
So the first thing that I would say is the reason that my practice is, I believe, different than other attorneys in the area is because I create estate plans based upon my client's individual, unique set of circumstances. So when you came to me with your wife and you said, hey, this is where things stand. If you recall, I didn't say, okay, this is our standard. This is what we do. We talked a lot. We talked through the issues and what was really important to you from the financial standpoint and also from the medical, because they're equally as important. And I just want to piggyback a little bit on what you said about, end of life decisions and the importance of having a living will. You've put your wife and your children in a position that they don't have to make those hard decisions if that time should ever come, because you've already memorialized it in a legal document. And
she is going to outlive me because she's happy.
Okay, we did.
She's happier.
we did determine that. We did determine that. But with that being said, just something to think about, Mike. Back to your, 45, 50-year-old. The first thing I would say is do not go online and download forms. Okay? That would be the first thing I would say. We are in the instant gratification age, and there's no way to walk around it. We've talked about that, but the reality is, Mike, is I get people that call me all the time and say, well, I went on to so-and-so, or I went to this copier place. I can't say the name, but you know what I mean? And
I went on that website to start up my LLC.
Okay.
And I learned real quick, You get what you pay for.
Yeah, you do. And that's what I try to tell people. That's why I say proper planning now eliminates the worry of tomorrow. Because when somebody comes to my office, 9 times out of 10 with a document that they got from a friend and copied and pasted and said, oh, well, my friend's attorney did this. I just copied and pasted the words. And isn't it just typing words, Jaleh? Isn't that all that it is? I mean, that's all you're doing. No, that's not even close to what we're doing, right? So the most important thing I can say is you need to speak to an attorney, whether it's myself or another attorney that specializes in estate planning or elder law. You need to speak to an attorney. Talk to them about what you have, what your liabilities are, what your assets are. And most important, Mike, and this is the most important thing for my practice, is what are your goals? Not what's going to make me the biggest fee or what's the most complex or no. What are your goals? Because if you have a very simplistic estate, right? Let's say you only have a home and you have nothing else and you have lots of creditors. Well, your estate plan is going to be very different than somebody that has a very significant portfolio. So that's the most important thing is speak to an estate planning attorney. They would definitely, especially myself, put you in the right type of vehicle for your situation because not any given situation, Mike, is the same. Not one client that walks through my door is the same.
And I think for business owners, they generally don't try to find the time for stuff like this. And for me,
yes. I couldn't say yes enough to that.
Right, but then things happen. You know, I mean, if you're an auto mechanic and you have an accident at, one of the lifts falls on you or something like that, your family's unprotected. You've worked so hard to go ahead and protect your family and provide for them.
Yeah.
But if you get to the point where, guess what? Now the state's going to get involved because you didn't take the time to plan and, proper planning pays, like you were talking about.
It does.
And that's really in any aspect of life. But when people don't ever want to think of the morbidity, you don't want to think of end of life.
Of course.
It's a reality. Eventually we're all going to become worm dirt. It is what it is.
As sure as we're born, that's what I say. The only certainties we have, Mike, is that we were born and we will die. That's it. There's no other certainties. Would you not agree?
Correct.
What other certainties are there in life?
Right.
That's it.
This conversation reminds me of, I was at a conference 2 years ago. Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago now. And I was listening to the speaker and the speaker talked about something that I never thought, because I like to be out in the wilderness. I like to go hunting. I like to go fishing. I like to go hiking, all that good stuff, and for anybody that knows me, they've seen where, if I take my family somewhere, it's an adventure. That's what we do. And I want to be exposed to that as much as possible. But the one thing that I never knew is if you ever look, especially when you go out west, there's tons of cattle everywhere. Well, when a storm comes in, the cattle always walk with the storm, trying to escape it by outrunning it.
Oh.
So they're actually in the storm for a very long period of time because they're going with the storm, trying to get out in front of it. If you ever watch a buffalo or bison, they run into the storm. They're the only animal that does this. They run into the storm because they're not scared of it. And they get through the storm faster because the storm is moving over them while they're moving under it.
Yeah.
And they've just learned that over time. So short-term pain, long-term gain, the same thing applies. Make that little bit of time to go visit Jaleh. And from a business owner standpoint, it didn't take a whole lot of my time, because I'm extremely busy 7 days a week. And you made it so damn easy. I came in there. You're like, okay, let's do this. And then the rest was kind of handled by phone. You're like, hey, I was thinking about this. Do you want to do this? Yes, let's make it happen. Yeah. Or I'd say, what are your thoughts? And you'd say, well, if it was me, this is what I would do if I was in your position. So from a business owner standpoint, it's not that hard to go ahead and protect your kids, your wife, your dogs, whoever, but it makes a lifetime of difference.
Oh, it makes a lifetime of difference for them. I mean, and that's really why we do it, right? To provide ease and comfort. And so we don't put the burden on our wives and children and husbands and family, right? And even if you're not married or don't have kids and your brothers or sisters or parents, that's the thing that I would say to piggyback on Mike is business owners are usually my worst clients only because of what you said. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'll get back to you. I have made it, especially in light of what we've all dealt with this pandemic, made it so much more convenient for my clients where I do a lot of things over Zoom. Zoom is probably my number one interface with clients, because again, you can Zoom from your car, you can Zoom from your office, wherever. The idea is we want to get it done for you, and we don't want to prolong it, because I can say, just like you've said, every single client, especially the business owners, they come back around and they say, thank you. I feel better, because even though it's done and I put it away and I don't have to think about it, it feels good. I don't have to think about it. Right. So that's really what it comes down to.
But I think a lot of it's in their own head, because like for me, I will tell you point blank, it was in my head. I always thought you had to be worth millions of dollars to need estate planning.
False. Completely
false.
Patently, like I said, completely patently false, especially our biggest asset as Americans, period, statistically. What would you think it is, Mike?
Your biggest asset?
Yeah.
Your home.
Period. Right? Most people work their whole lives to be in a position to pay off their mortgage, right? Because most people don't have the capital to just plunk down. People get mortgages. And so once you're in a position, especially once you've paid that off, you want to ensure that it goes as smoothly as possibly
So here's something.
to your loved ones.
Here's something.
I can help you with that.
Here's something that I think will help educate, because a lot of people don't necessarily know what happens. If you pass away in the state of Florida without a will, without a trust, without a end of life plan put in place by an attorney like yourself, what happens with the state?
Well, the state doesn't do anything. Nobody will do anything. And basically your property, so any bank accounts only in your name that don't have payable on death designations, any real estate you own, pretty much everything that you own solely in your name is just going to sit there for a long time.
Right. And your loved ones won't be able to access it or sell the property or
unless
access
you
the
have
bank
a probate.
accounts.
And so,
correct.
So, and probate is a big part of my practice, but when we talk about probate and estate planning, and I love them both, the idea with estate planning is to try to avoid probate if we can, right? That's the idea. Because especially with a lot of your clients, I get calls from you all the time where you say, I've been, the son of XYZ contacted me and said, Dad just passed away, 2 months ago. And, we need to get this house sold. Jaleh, what do we do? Mike, we got to file a probate, right? So, and that takes time. And then you have, depending on the assets of the estate, you may have even more time that you have to wait before you can sell this property.
Well, a great example, and actually this just happened a couple of days ago. I sent you a client that was from Massachusetts, right? They owned a piece of land that was on the intercoastal, and they wanted to sell it. Well, there was a death certificate from like the 90s or something that she had to get that she never had, because the land was still held in the husband's name, even though she had gone through the court process. So that just got done, I think, about a month or two ago. And then she called me and she said, hey, let's go ahead and list the property. But had they planned properly to get that done, they could have had this land sold. It would have been, and probably at a little bit higher price, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because vacant land, because the cost of building materials has actually gone down a little bit. And that's where prior planning would pay. Let me ask you just something on a totally different note.
Yeah.
So I talk to a lot of business owners and a lot of female business owners. And I love watching, it's like the back in the 1950s or whatever, with what was her name? The lady that had the scarf and she had her arm out like this and whatever.
Was this Susan B. Anthony?
No.
I knew you were talking about.
It was in World War II. It was like, let's go build the ships or whatever. And I see so many strong women going and opening up businesses now. You have 3 of the cutest freaking kids I've ever seen in my life.
Thank you.
How the hell do you balance that? Because you have an amazing support partner in Yusuf, who has been a fantastic dad. I love watching when he takes, your daughter for a walk and all that. But I think that's where a lot of women struggle, is to balance that work life. How have you done that?
And being totally transparent, he's been an integral part of my success in building my business. So I really couldn't have built it in the way that I have the last year without him. So family support, I mean, I have to be honest, especially with 3 children, there's a lot of days where mommy leaves the house before the sun comes up and mommy doesn't come home until the sun comes down. But with that being said, for me, the work-life balance is all about putting in the time and reaping the rewards. So for me, during the summer months, I bust my butt Monday through Thursday, and I don't work Fridays. And I do that even if I have to work 12-hour days, Monday through Thursday, to be in a position to take Fridays off. Nothing is more important to me, Mike, than my family. Nothing. I mean, and so this business, my business is a second to my family, which, that's just being transparent. But it's all about balance, Mike. And I can tell you that just like you, because you have your hand in many pots, multitasking is a fine art. I can tell you that I think that in being a mom and a wife and an attorney and a business owner, that multitasking has really been probably my biggest strength, right? Because you're doing so many things at once. But I think taking the time sometimes as well, though, Mike, to step back. A lot of times, even myself, and you gave me lots of encouragement because you saw me working for large firms and you said, you can do it. I know you can do it.
You just needed a kick in the ass is all you needed.
I did. Yeah. And I can tell you, especially because, as you know, my youngest children, my youngest is 20 months old and my next one is 3 years old. Right. So as a mother with young children, I would just say to other business owners that are listening, especially women, you can do it. You absolutely can do it. You just have to dig in your heels and make a commitment to yourself and your business and your clients and say, I'm going to do it. And you know what, Mike? The success, and you know this better than anybody, it's showing up every day. It's showing up. It's being prepared, putting in the time. That's what makes a great lawyer too. That's what makes a great realtor. You put in the time. You're never the realtor that shows up at the title office at closing and says, where's my check? Right? And that's it. Never. That's not who you are. But that's what separates you from the rest. And I feel like with me too, that's what separates me. I do what needs to be done, but I am prepared. Probably some people would say I'm overly prepared, but I just want to make sure I do the best thing for my clients and for my family.
You know, one thing I've learned, I'm so happy to hear what you just said, because time management is what I find kills a lot of businesses and marriages for that matter too, is one thing that I've learned is money will come and go. The most valuable asset we have is time. And when that time comes, whether it's with a friend or a loved one or whatever the case may be, and you look back going, I wish I would have. I don't ever want to have that issue of, I wish I would have. I've got friends that I will drive hours to go see. I have, my sister lives across the state and I miss her because I don't get to see her that much. And I drive over there as often as we possibly can. You've got to make that time, because there's no dollar that you're going to put in your purse or in your wallet that you're ever going to look at and go, yeah, I got that dollar. Nobody cares.
Ever. Or interestingly enough too, I mean, if you can even go back to childhood and as a parent, right, a business owner parent, I say, my kids are only going to remember the memories. They're not going to remember the material items.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, I think it goes, again, work-life balance, doing what's best for your business, doing what's best for your family. And sometimes, Mike, acknowledging you're human. There are times where we fall short as humans, but it's the ability to take that and grab it and say, you know what, I can do better. That makes you a better business owner.
For me, I talked about this with Ryder Gaston on the very first episode that I ever recorded here. The Navy SEALs have used a method. It's the 3 R's. It's receive, reflect, and respond. Receive the information, reflect on that information, and then respond. It's very easy to just be a keyboard warrior and start yelling at people and whatever. But if you absorb the information and I always try to put myself in someone else's shoes. And you and I have had some very spirited conversations around different topics before, but you sit back and you try to, okay, if I was in his shoes or her shoes or their shoes or whatever, how would I feel about this? And then respond. And sometimes it takes me a day or 2 or 3 to really respond. I'm like, you know what? I do want to get back to them, but I don't want to do it in a manner that's going to cause friction, because that's always the way that it goes. And there's unfortunately, there's just some cookies that you're just not going to get through to. You just won't get through to certain individuals.
But you know what, Mike, is respect.
It is respect.
It's respect, because here's the deal. We may differ on lots of issues, and that's okay, because we're respectful. And I think that we've lost the art for many reasons at this point where we are, of having the ability to just respect each other and respect the differences.
It's a social media effect.
It's horrible, because I feel like, and we've both seen it on social media. You can say things in a respectful way. You can have dialogue even when and we've disagreed on lots of stuff, but we still have that mutual respect. And because of that, I feel like we're always in a position to grow.
I say to others that are in my industry, it's literally, it just crawls under my skin every time that I hear it. For a faster response, send me a text on their voicemail. That's basically saying, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
I love talking to people. And when I text someone, I'm a very direct person. So I don't want to come across in a way that's not intended, because I know my words come across very directly, and they have been taken in the wrong way. And I think everybody's encountered this, but they've been taken the wrong way numerous times. And then I'll pick up the phone and say, hey, you know something? I didn't mean it that way. This is how I was trying to communicate. So I'll tell you what, from here forward, I just won't text. And I have clients that's all they want to do is text. But I'll respect what what their wishes are. And I'll text them, hey, do you mind if I give you a call real quick? Because that's the way to get around it for me.
I don't text in my business.
Yeah. I mean, generally attorneys don't.
Yeah. I mean, but you'd be surprised. You'd be really surprised how many, and I think it's just because of where we are from a standpoint of technology. But and the reason I don't, Mike, is because of what you said. You hit it on the head. I'm a very direct person. I don't want to come off as rude or,
abrasive.
Right. I mean, because these are very sensitive topics that I speak about. So no, I agree with you. I think that the lost art, Mike, of the conversation between realtors, especially between lawyers, it's gone. So I relish in the opportunity to pick up the phone, especially if a case is litigated, and speak to another attorney on the other end who's actually going to take my call and wants to try to work out the issues. What's best for the client, right? I mean, because that's really why we're here. So unfortunately,
your job is the same as mine.
Yeah,
it is a meeting of the minds, and we represent the client. And way too often, individuals get emotional. I experienced it last night. I told you about a story, and we'll see what direction that goes. But it's a business transaction. It doesn't have to be difficult because you're representing your client. I'm representing mine. Let's find a way to get them to meet in the middle. Or if it's unsalvageable, then it's unsalvageable and we just move on. We shake hands and, see you when I see you. So I want to ask you one last question here. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Your business has grown so rapidly where you were working for large firms, went into practice for yourself. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
That's a great question. I see myself still here in Newport Richey. I love Pasco County. I love practicing law here. I love the people that live here. I love it. I do a lot of business in Pinellas as well, although my office is located here in Pasco. But I see myself here, hopefully with maybe another attorney working with me, maybe 2 other attorneys. But I want to keep the personal touch. So, somebody told me once, slow grow, right? So slow grow. So the idea here is to keep the quality of product, the quality of service that I provide, while continuing to grow and to provide that to more people. So I've been very blessed. I started on my own business venture February 1st of this year. And it's been more amazing than I could have ever dreamed of. And I've been very, very blessed thus far. And I just hope it keeps continuing to go in a great positive direction.
Isn't it amazing when you get out of your own head how things happen?
Yeah.
Because we are our own worst enemies. If I ever tell myself I can't do something, I just start doing it.
Yeah.
Like everybody has that voice in the back of your head. And for me, I'm working on something right now, and I have an accountability buddy. So if you ever watch South Park, they had accountability buddies.
Yeah.
And so I have a very close friend, you know her as well, that we are each other's accountability buddies, and I'm working towards it because it's something I've delayed doing for a long time. And it's been in the back of my head. And then I had to fight that voice. And now I'm fighting that voice, and I'm about 42% done as of today.
Good.
And my goal is to get it done by year's end. And so it's been fantastic having you in here.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel very blessed at the opportunity to come and speak to your audience and share my knowledge and experiences with your listeners.
So if people want to get in touch with you for estate planning, probate, general questions, whatever, how do they do it?
Guardianship, Medicaid planning. The best way to reach me is to call my office at 727-853-1200. You can also email me. My first name is Jaleh, Jale. And that's at Pasco, Pasco, Elder, ELDER, law.com. So Jaleh at PascoElderLaw.com. Yes, that was a mouthful.
Yes, it was.
So the phone number works too.
So Jaleh, thanks for coming in. Thank you for being my friend.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. You and Jamie, you guys have added so much to our lives with your friendship, and we just can't wait for the next adventure.
Looking forward to it. Yes. So see you guys next time on the Mic'd Up Podcast.
Thank you.